Well, Daredevil Born Again Season 2 is finally over, and honestly, Marvel might have just reminded everyone why street-level MCU stories work so well, because the finale completely changes the future of Daredevil. Matt finally does one thing we've never thought he would do. Bullseye absolutely steals the episode again.
Poser.
Fisk fully crosses the line, and by the end of this, the entire status quo of the show is completely broken.
Oh, what the fuck?
And I've got to say, after the messy first season, this feels like the version of Born Again we should have had from the start. Let's talk about it. This whole season has been such a massive step up from season 1. Now, fair enough, season 1 was kind of a Frankenstein season, right? They were taking a version of the show that had a completely different direction, then halfway through basically reworking it, changing creative direction, bringing people back in and trying to rebuild the thing while it was already in motion. So honestly, the fact that season 1 ended up so good as it did was already kind of impressive. But now that they've got to make season 2 properly from scratch with a clear direction and an actual plan, yeah, you can actually feel that difference. And having everything in this season eventually finally coming to a head in a courtroom, such a fitting place for the conflict to end up. Karen's court case, Matt's there, Fisk is there, and then we get that unbelievable scene with Matt interrogating Fisk on the stand. Absolutely brilliant.
Answer it, sir. I will answer it.
Charlie Cox, man, he's just been fantastic. Just another reminder why he's so perfect as this character. The acting in that whole sequence is pretty incredible. The speech, the pressure he puts on Fisk, the emotion behind it, and then his whole plan to basically expose himself as Daredevil in order to force Fisk into a corner. Really, really great stuff. Because Fisk is left with basically two options, either step down or admit guilt to everything. And that scene honestly feels like one of those moments that's going to go down as one of the all-time Daredevil scenes. Top tier stuff. And yeah, Matt basically has his I am Iron Man moment, his I am Daredevil moment, I guess. And I love that little touch of him proving it by throwing the cane and catching it. Such a cool moment. But yeah, what does this mean going forward? People know Matt Murdock is Daredevil now. That completely changes the status quo. What does that mean for him legally, personally, for the people around him? Massive implications moving into season 3, that's for sure. Another thing I've absolutely loved this season is Bullseye. Honestly, this has almost been Bullseye's season at times. Every time he's on screen, he just steals the episode. And again, here he gets another awesome action sequence, taking out Fisk's task force in his own insane way, throwing knives, bouncing objects off walls, basically turning anything around him into a weapon. It's just so cool. And I've seen people online saying they'd love to see him join something like the Thunderbolts. I don't even know how that would work, considering the Thunderbolts are basically the new Avengers now anyway, but honestly, put him anywhere. I'll watch it. Because every scene with Bullseye this season has been fantastic. And it definitely feels like they're setting up something bigger for him moving forward. So yeah, more Bullseye, please. A lot more Bullseye. Now, if I do have a gripe with this finale, it's probably the stuff surrounding BB and Daniel. Because BB clearly knows Daniel is dead, but unless I completely miss something, we never actually see her find that out. Daniel dies at the end of the previous episode, and then here she just knows. It feels a little bit odd, especially because Daniel's death was such a huge moment at the end of the last episode, and then here it almost feels brushed over. You mainly just see him in the videos BB is producing and through her holding his photo. It just felt like there should have been a little bit more consequence or emotional fallout from that. Because to be fair, I've said throughout most of the season that I wasn't super interested in the BB and Daniel storyline anyway. And honestly, it turned out okay in the end. I just think Daniel's death maybe needed a little bit more weight to the finale, especially the way that last episode ended. Another small issue I had is the ending with Fisk. Now, I actually really like the conversation between Matt and Fisk at the end of this episode, and I like the overall idea of where things end up. But Fisk straight up brutally murders civilians in this episode, and somehow still almost avoids real consequences for it. Whereas Matt definitely walks away with lasting consequences. And I guess that's kind of the point, because by the end of the season, both Matt and Fisk are basically forced away from New York. And I actually really like the way that's framed, because both of them genuinely love the city. They do almost anything for New York, they just go about it in two completely different ways. and that's what keeps putting them against each other. So the idea that their obsession with protecting the city ultimately leads to both of them losing their place in it, that's really strong stuff. And honestly, that's been a running theme through basically every season of Daredevil, and they do it really well again here. Now, with that being said, I do kind of agree with some of the conversation online that it might finally be time to move away from Matt versus Fisk as the main conflict. Now, don't get me wrong, I think they've handled it well over the years, and they've found different ways to approach it across all these seasons, but I do think people are probably ready for something new now. I don't think people necessarily want another Fisk monologue heavy season again. We also do get more Jessica Jones in this episode, which I'm glad about, because obviously she was teased heavily before the season started, and then only really properly introduced in the last few episodes, so it was great seeing her more involved here, even if she's not doing a massive amount. Just seeing her fighting alongside Matt again was really cool. And then we also get really cool tease towards the future of the MCU at the end of the episode. I won't spoil it here, but yeah, definitely didn't expect them to tease that this early. Very cool. And then Angela fully stepping into the White Tiger role. Again, something I didn't expect to happen so quickly. She still comes across as so young to me. How old she's meant to be, I'm not too sure. But seeing her fighting alongside Daredevil and Jessica Jones was still pretty cool. Even if it was slightly funny at times, because she does just look like a small kid next to them. But yeah, I definitely want to learn more about her character and her powers. And honestly, if Marvel still plans to do Young Avengers or Champions or whatever it is they're calling it at this point, she actually makes way more sense age-wise than some of the original lineup at this point. Because some of those young Avengers are basically pushing 30 at this point. So by the end of the season, the status quo is completely different, and Fisk are in completely different positions than where they started. And now with all the definitive teasers and leaks about season 3, things are looking pretty interesting for the future. We've got the Heather Glenn storyline continuing, which has actually become a much more interesting side plot than I expected. Definitely feels like she could become one of the villains moving forward, but probably not necessarily the main villain. But honestly, that's what makes season 3 interesting, because for the first time in a long time, we generally don't know what the main threat is going to be. Could the Hand come back? Possibly. That would be interesting. But then there's also certain places Matt ends up by the end of this season, and certain upcoming movies that also involve that same place. And yeah, there are definitely some cool things making my spider sense tingle a little bit, if you know what I mean. That's all I'll say. But overall, guys, really strong finale, really strong season. Again, Bullseye was absolutely fantastic all season, and Charlie Cox in that courtroom scene, chef's kiss. That is an all-time Daredevil moment. Absolutely top-tier stuff. If I still have one criticism of the show overall, though, it's that the world still feels a little too small at times. It's weird seeing massive events happening in New York and it still feeling kind of disconnected from the wider MCU. You'd think other heroes would at least take notice of what's going on. And sometimes the show still kind of feels like the old Marvel television era, where everything was technically connected, but also weirdly isolated. Now, I understand why Marvel does that. They don't want every project to feel like homework, and they've said that, but I still think there's a middle ground there. And I'd definitely like to see Matt more involved in the wider MCU moving forward, especially on the big screen. And with all the rumors surrounding the character's future after Born Again Season 3, who knows what's coming next. But anyway, guys, that's my review of Daredevil Born Again Season 2 finale, The Southern Cross. Thanks for tuning into all these reviews all season. It's been awesome. We've got the Punisher special next week, so obviously we'll be covering that on the channel too. So until then, guys, I'm out.